This is going to be the last of the Women's Prize winners ones.
Mm-hmm.
Hi. Oh no, I'm just not looking at the camera. Hi and welcome to my channel. I'm Simon of Savage Reads, and today I'm back with my mum.
Hello.
And we're going to be talking about the final 4 of the 24 winners of the Women's Prize so far.
We are.
It's a tongue twister, that one.
It is. I'm not going to do it.
It's proved a tongue twister every time we've done it. So those 4 are The Glorious Heiresses by Lisa McInerney. We've got The Power by Naomi Alderman, Home Fire by Camilla Shamsi, and An American Marriage by Tiara Jones, which won last year. So the first of the books we're going to talk about a bit is The Glorious Heiresses in this amazing neon cover, which it no longer has.
Oh, really?
It's got like a blue one. I've seen new editions.
Shame. I like that cover.
And this is set in Cork, and it tells of Maureen, a woman who kills someone. We know that from reading the blurb, but we know that from pretty much the beginning of the book. Sort of accidentally, although they had invaded her house. So,
yes.
You know, fair enough. So she gets her son Jimmy to help her because Jimmy is one of the most feared gangsters in Cork, and he then brings in his friend Tony, or is it Ryan?
Ryan's the young lad.
Yeah, Ryan. And then we kind of meet these characters and we go on with them. Did you enjoy this?
I did enjoy it. Yeah, I did. It's very dark. I found it quite grim in places.
It is very grim in places.
And I don't know whether it's just me, but I struggled a bit to find the humour in it. I couldn't help.
Oh, you see, sometimes I found it wickedly funny.
Yeah, so I can see why you might, but I think there's something wrong with me. Sometimes I can't see dark humour as humour.
Well, that's interesting. Well, I think she plays very well with when she does use humour, it's to shock, but not in a gratuitous way.
Yeah.
But also she uses it in that, I love it when authors use humour to highlight something awful.
Yeah. Well, I suppose the other thing that really sticks in my mind about this novel and reading it was that I couldn't help all the way through thinking about the family in Shameless, the TV series.
That's interesting.
And the father, Ryan's father particularly, really reminded me, what's he called? Frank.
Yes, Frank. I want to say Skinner, but that's the comedian.
To say that as well. But the father,
Frank in Shameless.
Frank in Shameless. To me, there was really striking similarities between.
Yeah.
Because Tony's an alcoholic, and the whole sort of world that they were growing up and living in was very similar in my mind. So. Usually when I read a novel, I'm picturing characters that you paint a picture in your head, don't you? If you're somebody who visualises things. And straight away I got Frank, whatever he's called, in my head when I was reading that. And also the kids in Shameless. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because this is one of those books where on one half I love it because it's the whole thing of gritty, working class, giving insight into lives that we don't see often. But it does kind of paint working class lives as pretty grim. And that's something that sometimes I think we forget about, the fact that some working class life isn't grim. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does make sense. There's joy. There are moments of joy, aren't there?
Yeah.
As there are in any life, no matter what the circumstances. Usually, there's some.
What's fascinating with this is, so this book's got a real resonance for me as well, because this I think was the year that I really got back into properly reading the Women's Prize. I think Long List for the first time ever. I tried to do it in that time, along with Eric over at Lonesome Reader, and we kind of read this Long List together but I also remember, it's interesting because this book, I remember certain particular scenes, but I don't remember the book overall. I think it's because I was cramming because it used to be a much shorter time period between Long List and Shortlist.
Okay.
But also interestingly, I've never read the sequel.
I didn't know there was
one. There
one.
is. Her second novel is a sequel.
Do you know what it's called?
I can't remember. And I was trying to look for it on my shelves and I can't find it. And I know I've bought it.
Oh, right.
So that's making me quite cross. But yeah, so there is a sequel. And I don't know if she's done a third novel or not. But she's definitely one of the... Also, I should say, I do love the lilt of Irish writing.
Yeah.
And this really has that to it.
Yeah.
So even in the darkest moments, it's still got that tone about it. And it really makes you read on. So that's our thoughts on that one. Then we have The Power by Naomi Alderman. Now, I've had an interesting relationship with this book because this is all about women who sort of overnight literally have power in their hands. They have electricity in their hands. And it starts off when a young girl is I think she defends her mother from bailiffs by using the power in her hands. And it shows how this starts to sweep around the world, almost like this pandemic, and obviously is a metaphor for women really gaining control. Now, I loved the first 2/3 of it, and then I struggled with the last third because I felt it got gratuitous at one point.
Okay.
There was a particular scene where there was a group of women who've taken power to like a megalomaniac extent, who have basically created a camp for men where they basically just abused them. And there was something in it where I thought, if you just reined it in a tiny bit, it would have been even more shocking. But the fact that she was so graphic in it, I found that really
Except that I felt that kind of extremism could exist in that situation. I didn't. You see, my feeling about this was, and it's not to patronise it at all, because I really enjoyed reading it, and I thought there was some amazing scenes in it. And the whole way that she makes this idea of the women develop this thing called a scheme.
Yeah.
And so she makes the whole idea of being able to sort of give this electrical charge to not just people but also objects. There's one bit involving a car, which I thought was the most amazing scene. The way that she makes that plausible, I thought was fab.
Yeah.
And I mean this in the nicest possible way. I wish I'd read it when I was younger. I think if I'd read it when I was sort of 15, it would have had a really profound effect on me. It did affect me, but not in the way that it would have done then. I
find it really interesting as well, because there's always been a lot of sort of comparisons to this in The Handmaid's Tale in all sorts of ways, even though they're totally opposite stories. But I get what people mean as an outwardness to it.
Yeah.
And that's because actually when she was writing this, she was under the mentorship of Margaret Atwood. So I think that's really interesting that came across. I would really like to read more of her writing.
Yeah,
and
I haven't got around to it.
There's one called Disobedience, which is now a film with Rachel Weisz and Rachel McAdams, which is about lesbians in the Jewish community. That to me sounds absolutely fascinating, and I think Lauren of Lauren in the Books has read it and absolutely loved it. So yeah, I liked this one a lot, and I think Naomi Alderman's a brilliant writer. Also, the other thing I wanted to say is Naomi Alderman writes computer games, and I think that comes through in this, because it is a proper advent. Like, you feel like you're on an adventure.
One of the things I loved about it was the global sweep of it.
Yeah.
You know, you said early on about the sort of pandemic, and I love the way you keep kind of popping up in different parts of the world. And I think that's something that writers perhaps don't do enough.
Yeah.
Especially now we live in this very sort of, well, obviously, you know, our travelling has been inhibited, but you know, there will be people watching this now on the other side of the globe.
Yeah, well, we hope so.
We hope so. So I really loved that about it. I thought it was very brave and hard to achieve, actually.
She's very good at creating, in essence, a new world, which is our world, which is recognisable, but then has that. And also, I think she looks at power from, it says it on the tin, but I think the way she looks at power is really interesting, and how even if you get power, you think you do good, and sometimes actually there's a temptation to do things that aren't so good, or to take that power to another level. But it's a really, really interesting novel, and it's definitely like a very feminist, it feels like a woman's prize book.
Yes, I can see that.
I think. But I think it's interesting what you say. I think that for a generation, this book will probably be a bit of a Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah, I think it will.
For a different generation since that one. Then we have... So, by the way, you've enjoyed both of those. I haven't actually asked you that, and I should have.
Yeah, I have. No, you did. You asked me about the first one.
Now, this next book I really, really, really loved. And she's one of my favourite authors. It's Carmilla Shamsie's Home Fire. And this is a retelling of a myth.
It is, yeah.
Now, did you enjoy it? Because I would assume that you would love a retelling of it.
I absolutely adored it. Well, no, because it can depend.
Well, no, we talked about it in our live.
Yeah, we did.
Which I'll link down below.
Yeah, and I thought this was one of the best. It riffs around the myth, if that makes sense, of Antigone, the story of Antigone, which is a...
That should be your YouTube channel, if you have a YouTube channel ever.
What?
Riffs Around the Myth.
Riff around the
myth. I really like that.
It's a bit hard to say, though.
Riff Around the Myth. Can't say it after you've had too many sherries.
Rude.
Sorry.
It's the story of Antigone, and Antigone's conflict. It's a Greek tragedy written by Sophocles, and of Oedipus fame. Antigone is Oedipus's daughter, and she has this huge conflict between her private life and public life, and between her duty to her state and her duty to her family. And that whole theme of those tensions between where your loyalties lie. Do they lie towards your faith, or your politics, or your, you know, the people that you love? And that whole sort of dilemma, which I think Sophocles explores brilliantly, I think Carmilla also explores brilliantly. And there are breathtaking moments in this novel.
The ending of this book, no spoiler, and even if you know the myth, the ending will still surprise you.
Yeah.
It is shock. It's just that you just
and there are relationships in this book which, again, I'm still kind of emotionally invested in. I mean, I read it when it first came out, and I don't know how many years ago that was. It's not that many, is it? It was 3 or 4 maybe. But I still feel, it's still sort of sitting in my head, very much so.
Because you have Isma, who is the eldest sister of a trio of siblings we meet, and she's gone off to America because her mother's died, and she feels she can be free from their younger twin siblings. And then we have Anika and we have Parvati, and I don't think it's giving too much to say that Parvati becomes drawn into a really dark part of humanity. I mean, this book looks at terrorism basically, and how people are brainwashed into it. And what I thought was incredible about this is at no point does Carmilla have it. The tone of the novel is never moralistic.
No.
It is, this is the story, this is what this character does, this is why they do it.
But without being clinical.
No, but also,
which is clever.
You feel for all the characters, even those that you completely cannot believe they're being taken away. There's also, I think, some incredible writing about modern politics in this, without it ever being boring.
I would agree with that.
And she does it in a really.
But also, again, this is another novel that has quite a global sweep, and that whole idea of being up in the middle of the night with your laptop and trying to communicate with people that you love, and you're not face to face, but you are face to face. I think there's a lot about digital communication in this novel. And the sort of hope it can bring, but also the inadequacies of it.
Well, also the danger. It's very much about the danger. So I think this is an incredible novel, but I've thought that about all of her novels that I've read. I think she is a really amazing writer. And I love this because when she won, she basically said, like, all her books have led up to this, and I thought that was a really nice way of looking at it. So we both clearly enjoyed that. One thing we are going to do, by the way, is that probably later in the autumn we'll discuss our top 5 maybe favourite winners of all time. And I think that's going to be really interesting. One, because obviously as we record this, we don't know what the 25th winner is, but I just think it would just be interesting to see, having read them all, what we think. Because, and I don't know if this is because it's one of the most recent, but this is probably one of my favourites, not to spoil it for everybody, but it's An American Marriage by Tara Jones, which was, as we record this, because this will go live after the winner has been announced for this year, it was the most recent winner, the 24th winner. And this is just, I think this book is incredible. What do you think about it?
I thought it was beautiful.
Well, I know, because we did this. Also, this is a really special one as well, because this is the first time we read the Women's Prize together.
It was, and it's the first time I was there as well at the announcement. So for me, it's very special. But I think it's a deeply, deeply touching story. I think it's a tragedy, isn't it?
Well, again, also with a myth element to
it. There is. There's the sort of link with Odysseus and Penelope, and the sort of the shock of that opening incident at the beginning of the novel was, well, once I read that, there was no way I was going to be able to put it down. So it's got this kind of unput down ability about it.
I think we can say a little bit what it's about. So it's about Celestial and Roy, and they are very newly married, and they're very, very, very much in love, and they go away to see, I think it's her parents, and they stay in a hotel, and he helps a woman who is she having trouble with her door?
Yeah, she can't.
So he helps her, and then the next morning the police come and arrest him. And
it's so pertinent, isn't it,
Yeah.
to the Black Lives Matter,
it is.
and the shootings that have happened recently, the police shootings. It's the same idea. It's the idea that he's black and therefore he must be involved
because
and he must be guilty.
This woman claims she's been raped. Now, what I think, and the reason that I'm saying that, because that happens very early on, and the only reason I mention that is because I think Terry Jones does something incredible here, because she lets the reader know that he didn't do it. His wife knows he didn't do it, and yet he still goes to jail. And then what follows on is that there are some. I'm not a massive fan of letters in books. Some of the letters in here where he's trying to describe how much he loves her and he's never really been able to say it to her are just, they will stay with me forever. They make me really emotional.
That's what I meant when I said it's incredibly touching and poignant.
Yeah.
And it's because you are so invested in his innocence as well. It does make you step into that different skin, that literally different skin, in a way that very few novels can. And I think the whole premise of it is really clever.
Yeah, and also she brings in another character. I won't spoil it for anyone, but there's another character that comes in that kind of changes everything and shifts the dynamic and the sort of the moral element of the story too.
Yes.
And that's really, really well done. I actually at first didn't like it for that. It bothered me for a while, but this book is one of those ones that since I've read it has grown and grown and grown and grown on me. And I have to say, I read her, I think it's her third novel, but her second that's come out in the UK, which is called Silver Sparrow, which is absolutely incredible as well. I can't recommend it enough, because it's about two sisters, and one of them and her mother knows that the other one is that their father is a bigamist, and the other sister has absolutely no idea. And it's so well done, and it looks at really, really interesting things. So yeah, so we both really, really love that one too. So that means we have read the 24 winners. Well, I've read 23 and a bit. But so I don't know, I think we're going to just have to tease people and say that we'll tell everyone what our favourite is.
We will.
Later in the autumn. But we would love to know your thoughts on these 4 books.
Yes.
Please let us know in the comments down below, and we can have a chat about them there. But until that video with my mum, it's goodbye from mum.
Bye.
And it's goodbye from me. I will see you in my next video. Bye.
Bye.